Bless you. It's great again to connect with you. We just, in the last session, looked at the behavior or um, the consequences or the blessings of a righteous believer. And we covered 10 areas in which a righteous believer would not partake in. A couple of them would be they wouldn't engage in false worship, they wouldn't commit adultery, and they would not oppress people. There are others, but I'll just name just a few, more than a couple, more than two, so three I named, that a righteous believer would not partake in. Why? Because they want to please the Lord. They trust God. They trust His word. And they obey His word. So that's important for us to note. That if there are righteous believers, godly men and women who live amongst us, even in our world today, as they, I believe, lived in the time of Ezekiel, then there are some traits that would very much mirror image each other. Okay. Now, this particular section here is looking at the wicked child of a righteous believer. Even though the passage here, we're looking at verses 10 through to around verse 13. Yes, of Ezekiel 18. I haven't more or less, or I haven't stipulated or written that down in the subject line, or the subject heading, because I want us to have a holistic view or understanding of what Ezekiel here is looking at and is addressing amongst the exiles in Babylon. And we are also exiled in this spiritual Babylon. Now, we may not be living in a city called Babylon. I don't live in a city called Babylon. Never have. And I don't think I will. In my lifetime, not unless the Lord transports me somewhere else into the Middle East there. However, we leave that up to the Lord. He can do anything and nobody can do anything, to kind of contradict that. Now, verses 10 through to 13 addresses, as we just mentioned, the wicked child of a righteous believer. Now there are a few areas also that is going to, and I'm going to just run through them because I do believe that in this section we need to make distinction of what a righteous believer does and what an unrighteous believer does. What a righteous believer does, an unbelieving man will not do because he doesn't think it's necessary or it's not in him to do righteously. So we have to understand that even in our day and time, today, as I've said, I believe in times past, at least sometime last year, even though it's a few days ago, that the Bible talks and addresses things of what happened historically. It's good for us to know that. It's good for us to know what went on back then. But at the same time, whatever happened then by way of righteousness or unrighteousness is very much amongst us today. I don't think that we could say, well, what's happened today never happened back then, or what happened back then in the day, and in this instance, in the time of Ezekiel, doesn't happen today. I believe it does. I believe that there are things. If Ezekiel came back today, whether it be worse or not, worse back then as it is, as worse then more than now, or today is worse than it was back then. I don't think that there is neither here nor there on that score. The point is that sin is sin, and whatever happened back in the time of Ezekiel, if Ezekiel was to come back today, I'm quite sure he'll be able, or he would say to you, to me, or to us, if we were gathered together in the same room, or if we were in the same area, that it happened. He would tell us there's nothing new. There is nothing new. It will get worse, yes. More sinful, more dangerous, probably, and more of the unrighteous or unrighteous descriptions. However, sin is sin, and I think we've got to understand, and we should be able to identify unrighteousness. We have to. It is very, very concerning to some extent when we are amongst the godly, when we are amongst the godly, or we are, wherever we are, and those who should be godly, and then when you hear them speak, when you hear them talk, when you hear them communicate, whatever it is that they've been asked to do, that they seem to be agreeing with unrighteousness. It's very concerning. Very concerning. However, verses 10 through to 13. Let me read that because I think it's been going through my mind. I've read it already and I shouldn't read it again. But let me read it so at least we know what Ezekiel is talking about, what he is addressing. And it's something also that we need to look out for in our day. This year, 2025. 2024 has already finished. So let's read, let's remind us of what Ezekiel is saying. If he beget a son, that is a robber. Or let me say, if he beget a child, I'm not trying to change scripture at all. No. I don't want to be accused of that. So I'm not changing the scriptures. But I think it's not only son, but as I've said before, there's some families that have daughters. So whatever it is that Ezekiel is saying here in regards to a son, I think we have to be very, I don't want to say gender correct or politically correct. That's not it. But I mean, we need to be fair in how we are addressing sin and addressing individuals. If he beget a son, in parenthesis a child, that is a robber, a shedder of blood, and that doeth the like to any one of these things, that doeth not any of those duties, but even hath eaten upon the mountains and defiled his neighbor's wife, hath oppressed the poor and needy, hath spoiled by violence, hath not restored the pledge, and hath lifted up his eyes to the idols, hath committed abomination, hath given forth upon usury, and hath taken increase, shall he then live? He shall not live. He that hath done all these abominations, he shall surely die, or she shall surely die. His or her blood shall be upon him. Now, again, let's spell out the things that Ezekiel himself has made mention of here. The wicked son of a righteous believer, or a wicked child of a righteous believer. Their behavior, he commits murder, or they commit murder, they engage in idol worship, they commit adultery, they oppress others, they rob others, they do not return what they have borrowed, they look to others for help, they do detestable things, and they charge excessive interest. Now, I am quite sure, and I have seen, I have witnessed, I have, had to, obviously, because of my age, you've had to deal or help to deal with certain things within families. And it's both between the son and or the daughter. As I've said, there are some families that don't have sons, they have daughters. And one of the daughters, become unruly, or they sin excessively. They do not honor their father or the mother. This here addresses also the love and honoring of parents. So here, God gives a verdict. What was the question that the Lord asked? Shall he then live after doing all that they have done in unrighteousness or unrighteously? Will they live because of these things? God gives his verdict. They will die. The scriptures, because he is addressing the son, he shall die. But let's also say, if it's also addressing, remember, it's personal responsibility thing. So if it's a daughter, the daughter shall die, she shall die. He or she is personally responsible. They are personally. We are responsible. We have to teach our children. We have to instruct in righteousness those who are around us. The father is no more going to die for the son, or in this case, yes, the son is not going to get away, but the father is certainly not going to die because of the behavior of the son. Okay, so we have to be very mindful. Be very mindful. In the eyes of God, the behavior of the wicked child is totally inexcusable. And there are some children in our day. There are some families who are under extreme pressure because of what the child is doing or has done. There are some mothers who are under extreme pressure. The father does not know what to do with himself because of what the child is doing, because of the love for the child and wanting the child to do better. But because the child is portraying wicked behavior and is acting wickedly, knowing that if the child does not change, then when the day of the Lord comes, especially in our day, especially for us, when we know that the day of the Lord is at hand and could come at any moment in time, and that child, our child, your child, or the child of someone that you love very much. When I say love again, it could be your best friend or a family member who's very close to you, because of the pressure that the parent is under because of the behavior of the child. And because if that child does not change, then that child who is personally responsible for their behavior, God is going to judge them. God is going to judge them. They will not live. Now, when we use the word live, it's not to say that God is going to kill them there and then. No, but you see, the scriptures tell us, and even within the scripture that we have been reading, it tells us, it reminds us that every man, every woman is going to live, even though we die in this life and to this world. But there will be a day coming when every man, every woman, every individual is going to live again to receive their reward, especially on how they lived in this life. And I think we've got to understand that. We've got to communicate that far and wide. We have to. It's important. And we have a responsibility. I have a responsibility. I may not fully understand. You may not fully understand what the scriptures are saying. But if we do the best that we can by giving instructions to those who are around us in righteousness, then the Lord uh, uh, Adonai Elohim will not hold us accountable. Because why? Because we have blown the trumpet, we have sounded the alarm. So all that we are seeing in this world and all that we are going to see if the Lord tarries, which is sinful in nature, we've got to speak out against such behaviors. That is part of the of what the church needs to be doing. Not just collect an offering, not just collect tithes or build a fantastic edifice, which is fine, which is proper, under certain conditions. But we've got to be able, we should be able, my friends. We should speak out what righteousness is and what a righteous believer does, and in this case, what a wicked child of a righteous believer will face if they do not make the correct action, all right, the correct choice. May God bless you. We've got one more session to do in relation to this particular passage, and then we will pray. I promise you. Okay, we will then pray. But read verses 14 through to 20. We will do that in our next session again. And then at the end of that session, we'll ask the Lord to help us. And I believe that you're praying anyway. You continue praying. Even if I don't pray, you pray. And the Lord, I'm sure, will help us, help you, and help me to be the man that we need to be, the woman that we need to be, that you need to be. We will be able to live in righteously, and obviously also, which is very important, to influence our children or our grandchildren. That's important. God bless you.